We're back.
It's been a while.
The boys are back in town. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Deven Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. This is Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth. So close.
Yeah,
So
it
close.
was.
So close. The world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm your marble mouth host, Deven Morgan, joined finally back in the flesh by my brother, by choice, not my blood, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Jeremy Tactile. So for you guys, you will not have to suffer through some long-winded, esoteric, hour-long me talking to by myself because I got my guy back, thankfully. So we're back here. Housekeeping notes as per usual, axbat.com, code DL20, get yourself 20% off. D as in, man, I'm too sick to be funny about this. D as in drop.
I was going to say drowsy.
Yeah, D as in drowsy, L as in lozenge. Drowsy, lozenge.
How we feeling today, people?
DL20, get yourself 20% off at axbat.com. Other notes of housekeeping, Skills to Scale, the complete youth baseball training manual is out. If you are on a field or you're rapidly approaching a field, you feel like you really don't understand how to make your practices run better. You really don't understand how to get these kids better, and you have like a 90-day season to execute. You are starting your club ball season, and things aren't going the way that you wanted to, and you want to get into the depths of skill development, understand like how and why to execute that process, and you want to trust someone that knows what they're doing. Well, funny enough, I have a book for you. It's called Skills to Scale, the complete youth baseball training manual. It's right above Jeremy's head. Not only is it the book itself, which is, I guess I should probably know this.
I pointed the right thing.
I mean, I've tried to do that literally last week, and I was pointing, and I forgot that the book fell down. Just felt like a dummy. It's a little under 300 pages. So, and I think one of the things we've talked about is, look, if you feel pretty confident that you know what you want to do on the pitching side, and you want to just jump into hitting, buy the book, get that stuff. If you feel that the inverse is true, that you feel like you've got a good, decent grasp on how to develop youth hitters, but you want some more guidance, structure, programming, insight, etc. about the pitching side and throwing side, we got you. It's just everything that I've learned over the course of 14 years coaching youth baseball, because it is 14 years this year, which is pretty terrifying to say, knocking at death's doorstep, but, you know, that's...
If you feel like you have a really good handle on coaching youth baseball, but you also have a growth mindset, you should also get this book.
Yeah. In addition, it's not just the book, it's all the online resources as well. You're going to be able to pick up on our yearly training plan, which does not mean you need to run our schedule. You just run it in the framework that we run it, which is you can start now if you wanted to and just jump into it and understand that you're in a gameplay phase. So we're going to move to the gameplay part of the YTP. It's modifiable based on your calendar, the hitting videos, the drill videos, the 6-week practice schedule, the long-term athletic development exercise library, the dynamic warm-up library. It's just everything that we got to throw at the problem. Skills to Scale, the complete baseball training manual. You can find it at drivelinebaseball.com. And we got a new thing that I did an hour talking by myself about my new bat last episode. So
it's so pretty.
Kudos to you guys that suffered through that.
Yeah.
It's our youth power bat. It is available right now at drivelinebaseball.com. Inventory is moving fast, so the new shipment that's coming behind this, if you want it now, you're going to have to get on it now because the things are just moving fast. And I'm not saying that to like fear-monger you into buying. I'm saying for $100, it's just the best bat speed training pool that you can buy. Yep. If you want to spend another $79 and get the Youth Underload Smash Trainer and get 2 bats, they're going to be able to have you train not only like ballistic bat speed, but also the discrete skill of moving fast accurately. We've got tools for you. They're accessible, they're affordable, they're good. Yep. One question that got asked to me was, hey, what do I do for programming with the Power Bat? DriveLineBaseball.com, free programs, the free youth hitting program, use that. It's really, really simple. If you probably get somewhere between bare minimum, I don't know, 6 rounds of 8. Actually, no, probably less than that. I think you need less stimulant. Like 4 rounds of 8 is probably about enough dosage that you need. So if you want the idea of how to integrate those 4 rounds into 8 in your team practices, Skill to Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual, I got practice plans for you. The tool itself is a youth power bat available at drivelinebaseball.com. What else for housekeeping? I think that's it.
That's it. Next episode, we'll have more.
Oh, man, alive. Next episode, we are going to talk in depth about a new training product that we have. This is 2024 is a year of new things for us. No great surprise that when the two of us actually have the time to develop this stuff and we've solved, well, maybe not solved, we've refined a lot of the logistical operation of this thing, we can actually come up with some pretty cool new stuff.
Yeah.
So we have a new training option.
Shout out to our kick-ass staff who
100,000%
really helps us take a lot off of our plate so that we can focus on some of these newer training products and newer equipment products as well.
No, it is exactly that. It is totally kudos to our staff, trainers, other people at Driveline that allow us the space to like actually do this stuff.
Yep.
So we got a new training product for youth, and we wouldn't even be talking about it on the pod except that it's going to be accessible to anyone. A lot of this stuff has been gated behind teams before. We are going to break that dam open.
Yep.
I want to talk more about it, but anyways, we'll do that next episode. So now that we're back in the flesh, it's been awesome to see how our kids are doing in high school baseball.
Yes.
It's been really, really awesome. So I'm sure you guys that are listening are either have kids that are playing Little League baseball or they're playing high school baseball, and I think the best thing about the way that we run this thing and we spend so much time on development is that you eventually get to like flip the page and now you get to see that stuff pay off.
Yeah, it's what it's there. It's what we do it for, right?
Yeah. And man, shout out to one of our parents who sent us a picture the other day of 3 of our kids that are basically like manning the infield for one of the high school JV teams.
Yeah.
But then the funny thing that I didn't realize, and you told me, is that the shortstop is a kid that used to be in our program who's he's doesn't play with us anymore, but like great kid, great family.
Yep.
The catcher, one of our
right,
kids,
who is not in the picture, also one of ours.
So like literally the entire infield is our kids.
Yeah. And the only one who's not a freshman starting on JV is the shortstop, who's a sophomore.
Yeah, he should be a year older than those boys. So, I mean, it's getting a chance to be like up close and personal with high school baseball again is interesting. You show me a high school baseball coach, and specifically show me a junior varsity high school baseball coach, and I will show you somebody that really loves baseball.
Yes.
Because you're not doing it for accolades. Nope. You're not doing it for money. Correct. Right? You're just doing it because you really, really love it. Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's just been really. I've been lucky to have that experience with my own son's JV coach. It's just like you have to love it to be able to do that and to care that much. And I think it's interesting. Somebody was asking me about. Driveline has had this definitive impact on pro ball and college baseball. And I think it's easy to understand both of those things. It's easy to understand our success in pro ball because there's like direct economic ramifications.
Yep.
And if you can do this thing smartly and help players get better, this is very much like flashback to Kyle Bodie doing any number of different podcasts talking about turning like pennies into nickels and nickels into dimes, and how really smart organizations draft players, develop them, and then trade them for like MLB level assets because they've created the surplus value, right. The value between what you sign that player for in a contract versus what they're actually like worth on the open market. Yeah. Right. Thankfully, my Los Angeles Dodgers are a very good example of how to run that system. Pretty great. So you understand the ramifications of how that's played out at the pro ball level. I think the same can be true from a couple different places in college baseball, whether you've got like D1 programs who don't rely on just drafting like the best out of the best, but they even continue to develop those kids because the more that they develop them, the more that those draft prospects go up, the more that their team performance goes up, the more that more of those best of the best kids want to come play for them.
Right.
So you have that thing, and then you also have the small schools who don't have the luxury of drafting the best prospects, so they have to develop them.
Yep.
And you can see, those guys who start coaching at a D3 level and they do a really good job at developing a staff and a program, and then they get a D2 or a D1 offer, and then they move into pro ball. Again, there's economic ramifications. Oh, yeah. So somebody was asking me well, what about high school ball? And it's like, that's, I think, where it falls apart a little bit because there's no big economic multiplier there. it's not like if I'm coaching JV baseball at a metro area Seattle school this year, and I turn a program that was like 2-18 last year to, let's say, 14-6. That'd be a monumental improvement,
Huge,
right?
Yeah.
The best case scenario is that like maybe I get a look at a varsity program. Right now I could be a varsity head coach somewhere. But if I do that, it's not like I go from making no money to making enough money to like comfortably support myself.
Correct.
Nobody's getting, varsity high school coaches typically don't get enough money to just like have that be the only thing.
Depending on the state, but yes.
Depending on the
correct.
state, right? And then if I do that and I really crush it at the varsity level, it's not like there's some other high school out there that's going to be like, hey, I'm going to offer you 6 digits to come,
Right.
there isn't that thing. High school player populations are typically defined by boundaries. So it's going to, I think, take a while to see our impact at the high school level because there isn't this big economic multiplier there. And it's really going to have to be opening up the doors for 2 things. Positive, engaging, emotionally resolved experiences for kids that just get a chance to be competitive at high school baseball because they get to play it and they don't get cut. And, one of the things that like I talked about last week is when Danny was going through his tryouts, there were some kids that I saw who were like really good 12-year-old ball players that got cut. Because in the interim, 2.5 years, they either just didn't focus on the right things or got stagnant or some combination of 2. So I think you have that thing, and then you also have the kids who, because they spend their time well in terms of focusing on development, then they get to let that stuff play during the high school season, have good performances, and then you combine those 2 things, and then you open up the door for future opportunities.
Correct.
I
think the economic thing, if you will, at that level, the onus, you talk about college or pro, most of that, whether it's pro, it's on the organization. Player for sure as well. There are huge economic incentives for players.
I can't believe I didn't even talk about that, but yeah.
Right, to come here in the offseason to get more money. But obviously teams have incentive too. And colleges, it's the same way. Both the player and the team have the incentive to really develop and do that economically. High school, the coaching staff or the program doesn't necessarily have the economic incentive to do that. Yep. It is still very much there for the players. But it's one of the few levels where you don't get it from both sides, where you have to, as a player or as a family of a player, the onus is on you to understand that the economic incentive is to pay less for college.
Yes.
Or get into a school that maybe you couldn't have gotten into and get some financial aid to go there. And that's not readily apparent enough, I think, to enough people until it's probably too late.
The path is really hard to define.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for me to not use that as a jumping off point to talk about the thing we want to talk about next episode.
I know.
But yes, the path is really hard to define. And it's like, Connor Reynolds, who's been working with us, is on our staff and spends a ton of his time, maybe not a ton, an appropriate amount of his time, opening up the doors, leveraging the connections at field level for helping our older kids start to negotiate what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And what did he say the number is? We've been offered somewhere like $50,000 worth of
over $50,000 worth of scholarships have been offered to our kids in less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months, yeah.
Yeah, and within the last 2 months, which is really within like a 3 to 4 week period over the last 3 to 4 weeks.
And if you understand, like the actual structure of who can and cannot get scholarships at the collegiate level, who can offer what. At the D1 level, you're dealing with that 11.7 thing, right? Like it's not, the pool isn't huge. It's not like other sports,
right? But it's very difficult unless you are really in the know and really following these things. It's really murky and ambiguous, and it's very difficult to navigate the recruitment waters. Yeah. And a lot of people really don't understand the difference in scholarships between football, like the money-making sports, and the quote-unquote Olympic sports. Most schools, baseball is going to fall way closer to an Olympic sport than it is one of the money-making sports. And like people think of a lot, when you think of college sports, you think of basketball, you think of football, you think of these massive monetary behemoths that football's got like 100 scholarships to give out. Like all those guys
Right.
are on scholarship, and that is kind of what people think of when they think of college sports.
Right.
Is that every one of these kids is on scholarship, and that's just straight up not what it is in any sport other than football and basketball.
Right. And it makes sense because, those type of programs are playing in these stadiums where they've got 50, 60, 100,000 people there. Like,
Right.
the economics of it, I think, are easy to understand. It doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel fair, but it just bears out in the economics. But point being, I think it really makes my heart very full to see our kids go out there and like actually have success in competition because of how they've spent their time.
Yeah, I was traveling the last couple weeks and spent a lot of time on Game Changer on my phone. Shout out Game Changer. Live streaming a bunch of games, following game streams and box scores and things like that. Like I knew I was gonna miss having them here, but it's legitimately weird to see them playing and not have control or not be able to have certain conversations when they come out of the game. Or when things happen. But to see, so like for one example, I have one of the lovely young gentlemen on my team can sometimes struggle to control his emotions, and I'm game streaming his game because that one wasn't video streamed, and I'm watching some walks and some runs being given up, and it was like he got through the first 2 innings, over 50, like 60% strikes, but like and pretty solid. Third inning starts, still over 50% strikes, walking a couple more guys. Defense lets him down a little bit, and he gets pulled 1 out into this third inning, having given up 5 or 6 runs.
Yeah.
And in my head, I know what he looks like right now. Like I know what his emotions are, and I am struggling to like, well, I hope his coach is calming him down. I hope his coach is doing the right thing. And I'm helpless. I'm sitting there just watching on Game Changer, and then I see he's leading off the next inning, leads off with a triple, starts a rally, his team bats around, and they retake the lead.
Yeah.
And just like to have that like full circle moment of like, I really wanted to coach up this kid in this moment.
Yeah.
Only to realize that like he didn't maybe need me coaching him up in that moment. Like he was good. He did it. He was able to take that emotion and channel it positively into starting a rally for his team. And
to what degree is that behavior that he's learned because of how you've coached him prior?
Well, hopefully, right? But it's good. It's really good, I think, for me and for them probably, to have this time period where I don't have that kind of control and I can, let the baby birds leave the nest, if you will. And like, that's good. That's a hard thing to do when you are coaching, to let them like fail and not want to cue them up or interject and just kind of let them fail and learn from it. And that is the thing that high school is giving me the opportunity to do a little bit, is I have no choice but to let them fail. And hopefully they figure it out in the back end. And I'm not going to lie, looking at a lot of these results, not a whole lot of failure going on with my kids, which is really, really fun to see.
Yeah.
And makes me just like very antsy to get them back and playing games. And this week now that I'm back, I'm going to spend a lot of time going out to their high school games and things like that. And the other thing that has been interesting, enjoyable, whatever word you want to throw in there, is looking at the game scores and seeing kids that left us playing for other teams.
Yeah.
And where they're hitting in the lineup and the opportunities they're being given, as opposed to some of the other kids who didn't leave and have stayed here and are getting more opportunities at premium positions. It was, one of the cool things for me to see with my kids is kids that I love but would never play at shortstop or play in center field because I've got better options. They're not the premium there, are playing that on JV. Right? Like they're...
Which is so tight.
Which is tight. That like most of my kids are shortstops, center field, pitcher, catcher. They're not playing really anywhere outside of that, with the exception of a couple third base, first base here and there, maybe a second base sprinkled in. But that's really cool to see that like they are, some of the most talented kids on the field, because that's what happens. If you're a good left fielder, but on like your select team and you're just a good outfielder on your JV team and a good athlete, you're going to get bumped to center. And that's a really cool thing to see that, like, they're being given kind of top billing almost amongst a lot of the other JV kids, which is just really cool to see. And like the one you mentioned with the whole drive line infield. Yeah. We're not going to mention what team it is, but there is an organization that has been for a long time tied to that high school. Mm-hmm. And for our kids to win those spots over their kids is pretty cool to see.
I think it says a lot, I think, hopefully, about the coaches on those teams who are just making honest assessments about how they put the best team on the field together. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's, obviously the worst thing you'd ever want anybody to have to deal with is like politics. But having kids being able to get the freedom to just like go out and win a spot, absent those politics, is great. I'll tell you, like, I empathize entirely with like the weirdness of it, because I've never been a drop-off dad. Never. Never. Didn't matter what sport they were playing. And now it's like, hey, D's got practice at 3. Pick him up, take him down there. We'll spend 5 minutes in the car, drop him off, and I'm out. Yeah. I'm out. Take him down for, hey, 4 o'clock, game, be there, 2:30, 2:45-ish, drop him off. And like, they're just doing their thing. And all I can do is I just walk around the field. Yep. I have walked more in the last 2 weeks than I probably have in the last 2 years easily. Yeah. So I'm getting a lot of walking in, which is good for the old knees. Crushing some podcasts, which is good. Listen to the new Killer Mike album a ton because it's really great. But yeah, man, I don't know. I've not only just my kids' coaches, but I think just seeing a lot of the other guys that have been coaching JV, just regular JV baseball, and the teams that they're playing against. Like, it's just, I don't know. You got to love the game so much. I think I'm sure that there are some people out there who, for whatever reason are not running it the way that they should. But at least in the early part of the season, it's just been great to see coaches on the other team, my own kids' coaches. Like, it's what it should be about, And I think that really, like, I know that there's been some conversation online about the role of high school baseball, and some people saying that, like, well, if you're not getting XYZ from your high school team, you should just not play. And I don't know, man. I think being able to talk to the parents and talk to coaches and just look, I'm at the field, so I'm seeing a lot of kids that I used to coach, and it's like they walk up, hey coach, how are you? And it's the community thing, and it just has so much value. I think it's just so valuable for these kids to be able to do that and have that be integrated with their school community. Like, that's just, I don't know. I understand the point being made about, hey, if you want to maximize leverage, maybe you don't play for a bad high school baseball program or whatever. But like, I think you can't deny just the incredibly positive social ramifications, so long as we just run that experience in like a relatively positive fashion.
Yeah, without question.
It's like I was talking to a friend of mine who has a kid who's 2 years older than D, so it's the same age as Cora, my daughter. So they're juniors, and he was telling me about when his son got called up to varsity the first time, and he went out and he got brought up as a pitcher because a standard template, like, young kid throws hard, he's going to get some looks, and he went up and got brought in as relief, and he got out of it out of the relief opportunity. They gave him like 6 or 7 pitches. And he's like, as a dad, I'm sitting in the stands. I'm like, all right, like, this, everything's going to be smooth sailing from here on. Next half inning, he gets knocked around for like 4 or 5 runs. Yep. Just got the wrong part of the order. And that was his cup of coffee on varsity that year as a freshman. And I will say that it's, we spend so much time talking about long-term development, and like, those kids that who left us because we have this developmental focus in the off season, maybe not having as much leverage to win roster spots versus some of our kids who did. Yep. I mean, it's crazy to me. Honestly, it's crazy to me that there's pushback about this idea that, like, as the club or the select organization, we shouldn't be so developmentally positive and so developmentally focused, because to me as a parent, that's how I'm thinking about my kid's entire high school baseball experience. You're just a freshman. We got 4 years.
Yeah.
We got 4 years. And, the fact that there's some clubs in the select and club ball experience, it's just like, got to win right now. Mm-hmm. And they're completely intentionally ignorant about what happens when you get to high school, and that now you have another 4 years to recontextualize this entire experience is amusing to me, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's the competing and it is not actually competing, but the idea that we have competing interests with high school with and a lot of club teams probably do have competing interests with high school teams because both of them are interested in winning. We should be working in tandem with every high school that's out there.
Right.
We want to develop these kids so that they're better for you to go out and win games for you. So, this is the thing that we've run into a lot, whether it's in Arizona or up here. Things like, playing fall ball, doing off-season lifts, doing the captain's practices leading up to the season.
Yep.
All of these extra things that high school baseball programs do that put a layer of pressure on a lot of these kids to feel like I can't get this roster spot that I really want if I don't do X, Y, Z leading up to this, or I can't. I'm not gonna make varsity as a freshman if I don't go and show them what I could do at captain's practices or things like that. And time again, all that matters is your output. If you increase your output, the coach isn't going to complain, right? And when I was in Arizona a couple weeks ago, we were talking about one of the programs out there that does that has their own off-season lifts. Mm-hmm. We had a couple players that are at that program that did their lifts. They really felt like we can't not do our high school lifting stuff. They're varsity players, so it's not like they're a freshman trying to make the team. They're like established varsity players who feel the need to go to these lifts and things like that.
And there's social ramifications to that. Like we're totally, we get it.
100%. Then there was a group of kids from that same school and from other schools who participated in our lifting. And it wasn't close. The gains weren't close. And it's a really difficult conversation to have with any of these kids who, I get it, you feel this pressure to go to the events that your high school is putting on. They're not going to make you worse. You feel like, your high school's not trying to make you worse. Of course they're not trying to make you worse. Yeah. It's what degree of better do you want to get?
Right.
Like,
because there's a
do you want to do the same thing as everybody else?
Yep.
Or do you want to maximize that a little bit more? And I'm not going to lie, you're taking a risk saying that, like, I'm not going to do the same thing as everybody else. And there is a chance that there are repercussions down the road for me not doing the same thing as everyone else. Specifically, if I don't outgain all these other kids, if I choose a different route and I don't outgain them, I have really put myself behind the eight ball here.
Yeah.
Because not only did I do the unpopular thing, and maybe coach isn't super happy that I did this, but I now also don't have the developmental gains to prove that I was right. To not necessarily listen to what you guys were telling me to do. Right. And like we have seen time and again that like you're going to get those developmental gains here. And you're going to get it more than you would at a high school program.
We're just kind of good at what we do.
We're good at what we do. And that is a choice that I can't make for families. I can't make it for kids. And it kills me a little bit every time I hear but my high school coach said to do this, or my high school coach said to do this. It's not his career, it's yours. So I feel like I've talked about this on the pod, but we had one of our 16U athletes here who was really, really wanted to make his varsity team this year. His varsity coach told him, you got to be faster. Like, that's what I need from you. I need you to improve your 60 time. Yep. And it's like an honest conversation. Why do you think he's telling you that? Well, because that's my way for playing time. No. It's your way for playing time because he sees you as a pinch runner.
Right.
And if you're faster, you're more valuable to him in that role. Right. Is that the role that you see yourself in? Are you a pinch runner? Okay, well, now you got to go out and hit 90 from both sides of the plate to prove to him that you deserve to be more than a pinch runner on this team. Because he's going to put you in that role and try to develop you in that role. If you're not comfortable being in that role, then you have to take some risks.
Yes.
And as far as risks go, not playing fall ball with your team, not doing certain off-season lifts, things like that, that's a pretty low risk.
Right. And, it's tough to unpack. I understand why people are compelled to make the easier choice. Like, I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about it on here, trying to have Danny stay consistent with what we're doing here in the off season versus being present enough at the captain's practices so that the coaches saw him, so that he starts to build a relationship with the kids. It took a lot of juggling. I mean, you and I had conversations about that, like trying to figure out that. So I get it, but again, your coach wants to put the most competitive product on the field. And yes, like we just talked about, there aren't the economic ramifications in terms of like college and pro ball to doing so, but like no one wants to be embarrassed. No one wants to lose a job. Right? I mean, I'm sure that most of the JV coaches look at the varsity coach job and they're like, I want to get there eventually.
I want that job, yeah.
Right? And how are you going to do that? We're going to do that by making the AD believe that you're a better option than whatever they have. So how do you do that? You have to have players, man. Like, you just have to have dudes.
Yep.
And the more dudes that you have, and the more... again, I understand all the social ramifications of being at the off-season lifts or going to the captain's practices, but at the end of the day, the tryout is going to start. And yes, to some degree, some coaches and maybe some of the upperclassmen might be influenced by, like, who showed up to what.
Yeah.
I get that.
And there's not, like you said, there's not no repercussions there.
Right. There is risk, to your point.
There is risk. There are repercussions that exist here.
Yeah.
You got to,
But look,
what was that? It was Bruce Arians, right? That no risk it or no risk it, no biscuit, right? Wasn't that what he used to say?
Yeah. But the risk that you're taking on is just like very much relative to your ability to execute and get better. And I think that that's the thing. It's just like we feel so comfortable in the system that we're running that it's like, look, if you just show up and put in the work.
And I think I'm in a unique position as the 15U coach because I think the hardest time is as a freshman.
Oh, yeah.
When you're coming in and you feel all this pressure because I have to make a good impression, I have to get seen, I have to make sure that I do all the things they're asking me to do so that I'm not seen as like a guy who doesn't follow the program.
Yep.
All these things.
Because they don't know you.
Right. And then once you've made the team, things go away a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of this pressure goes away a little bit. You can spend a little bit more time. You have a little bit more established relationship with coach and teammates that you don't feel the need. Like you're okay saying, hey, I'm not coming into the lift today because I'm going to lift a driveline or whatever it is. And that's multiple times harder when you're a freshman.
Yeah.
To like stand up and make that choice.
Yep.
And I get it, but it's even more important as a freshman.
Yeah.
And like, this is a conversation I've had with most of my kids, but I would rather they not make varsity.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can have is a bunch of playing time. It's not really going to make you better as a baseball player to sit on the varsity bench.
Yeah, varsity sitting on the bench is just not the move.
Nope.
I mean, and that's literally, that's a conversation that I've had with Danny on multiple occasions. And it's so funny to see the way that this whole thing plays out in terms of like a very long window of time ago versus making it all be real now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you had these kids who just set up these destinations on the journey, and like one of those destinations should be high school baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like I've had the conversation with my son, like, look, if you made varsity as a freshman, that's great. That doesn't future-proof anything for you. If you get cut as a freshman, that doesn't future-proof. That doesn't lock anything for you either.
Nope.
Hence our prove 'em wrong group.
Right.
But it's just, again, you have time, and once you make the team, you should be able to start to relax and to some degree that like, all right, cool, now I can just kind of focus on playing the game. But if you've spent your off-season time correctly, your ability to do that at a more competitive level should be, dramatically increased.
Yeah. And I think the thing, most of the kids on my team were extremely worried about tryouts.
Oh,
You were aware. You got one in your house. Whether it was, and most of them, it wasn't making the varsity team. It was just like tryouts as a whole.
Yeah.
And the amount of messages that I've gotten from them over the last 2 weeks, once they started playing games, of like, why was I nervous? Like I'm a lot better than most of these kids. Whether it's my own teammates or competition, like I am in a way better spot than the vast majority of the kids that I'm playing with. Why was I nervous in the first place? And I think that's maybe a select ball narrow view.
Sure.
Of like the kids their age, they're competitive with the kids their age. And if that's the only thing that they see of like, oh, I'm fighting against all these other 15U kids from other select programs for high school slots, that makes this a little bit more difficult in my mind, as opposed to really saying that like, no, there's probably only a couple kids at each school that are playing select ball.
A handful of kids at each school. The sample size is way bigger.
You got a bunch of kids who maybe haven't played baseball in a couple years who are trying out for this team, and you know, things like that, where I think immediately for a lot of my kids, after the first day or two of tryouts, they're just feeling way more relaxed after the first like day, hour maybe, where they still look around and they're like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I don't have anything to worry about anymore. But how do we get to that point leading up to that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think captain's practices don't do great there either.
No, because you're not even, it's so informal, right? That you're not even seeing, because, I mean, a lot of the kids, at least in, you know, small sample, right? A lot of those kids that showed up to tryouts and ended up getting cut, they weren't coming to the captain's practices either.
Correct.
Right? So the captain's practices, you're going to see some established players. You might be some freshmen, but like you're not going to see all of them.
No, you're going to see the better freshmen, generally.
Right.
So it gives you this skewed view of what the competition is, and then you show up and you're like, oh, I'm a lot better than you know, most of my teammates.
Yeah.
And it even, you know, a lot of kids on our second 15U team are a heavy amount of playing time in JV.
Yep.
And it's really cool to see. And a lot of these kids were terrified about tryouts. I don't know if I'm going to make my team, yada, yada. And I don't know how we shift that and get them to understand that a little bit better. And it does come down to the numbers. Like if you hit the ball, if you're hitting the ball consistently over 85, you are not going to have a problem making a team if you're a freshman.
Right.
I don't care what school you go to.
Yeah.
If you are consistently hitting the ball over 85 miles an hour as a freshman, you're going to find a roster spot. It could be on their freshman team or whatever it is, but you're going to find a roster spot. It's the kids that can't do that that have to be, or that should be, extremely concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I did a clinic for a local Little League yesterday.
Yep.
So shout out to those guys and girls that came down. And, you know, because it was the same league as the one who those kids are playing in at the high school, I added a slide to the deck that had that picture. And what I put in there was like their first year stats in our program and basically where they are now. And one of the things we talk about a lot is like, you know, what's the intention of Little League baseball? Like, what's the thing? And to me, it's really simple. Keep them playing for one.
Yeah.
And develop the skills that are going to scale.
Right.
That's just it.
Yep.
And I think you can do both of those things for all of Little League players and feel confident that you're serving all of them. Mm-hmm. You're going to have kids who just like they play baseball year round and they drop into rec ball because they just want to go crush against kids that aren't as good. I get it. And then you're going to have the other kids who just like they play baseball during baseball season. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have those two things as your North Star, you're going to serve all of them. Mm-hmm. But the point being that you just landed on, which is like those three kids that, you know, that are in that picture for us, their numbers when they started with us were not exemplary.
No.
And if they had just been very complacent with just kind of like maybe average or expected biological gains year over year, they're not in that position.
Yeah.
They're not hitting balls above 85. They're not throwing above 75. And it's just harder to justify those kids making a roster because the skill stuff isn't there.
Those kids are going to get multiple opportunities to fail at the high school level. If you can only hit the ball 70 miles an hour, you're not going to get multiple opportunities.
Well, and it's like, look, you know, I've all this stuff that we talk about, the need for skills of scale, the way that the playing field changes the game. It's like I'm seeing it play out in real time.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with parents that I've known for years and years and years. And like, the JV team, the first couple of games, they struggled to hit the ball. And it's like, it's not that they weren't putting stuff in play. Putting stuff into play is turned into outs because it's not hit hard enough. Right. And it's really, really simple. Like we had a really good question a couple of episodes ago. Somebody was talking about this idea of like, well, I don't understand that you guys advocate for like developing max velocity, but then there's pitching, right? But you have to understand this idea of like the rising tide raises all ships. Like that's why.
Yeah.
Like I of course I've got all the tech and the toys because I work here. So from my son's first start, I break out the pocket radar and I've got my phone and I'm linking it. So I've got the video and I've got the speed at the same time, yada, yada. First inning, he's sitting like 81, 82. And if you longtime listeners of the show know that he popped 85 in a showcase. Or 84.9.
84.9.
84.9.
Yep.
I told him literally last night at grandma's house, my grandpa or my dad was like, how hard are you throwing now?
And he said 85?
He goes 85. And I pop up from the living room. I said, we don't round up. It's 84.9. Anyways, it's 84.9. Yeah. So first inning, he's sitting, 81, 82. Second inning, 81, 82. Third inning, 80, 81. Fourth inning, 80, 81. Fifth inning, he went 5 2/3, and he should have gotten all 6, but drop third strike on a
damn it
swinging drop third. I mean that was a bastard slider. Anyways, he's still finding 80, 81s and some 2s in that sixth inning.
Pretty tight.
So I asked him. I was like, because again, I'm dropout dad.
Yeah.
I'm drop off dad now, right? I drop him off. I go do my walking. Once the game starts, I sit in the stands and shut up, and then we're not going to talk until afterwards. So we get in the car, and he wants to talk because it went really well, and I was like, so tell me, like, well, how what were you intensity like in the first inning? He was like, it was probably like 75, 80%. Like, so what was it like in the sixth? He's like, oh, it was probably like 90, 95.
Yeah.
So the reason for developing maximal thrown ball velocity is that you can do exactly that.
Yep.
You can cruise at 80-ish% in those first couple innings. And if you've trained the way that we do and you've tolerated stress, right, both in volume and intensity, then as the intensity of that workload or as the volume of work goes up, you can increase your intensity. Yep. Because you had that remaining, right? Yep. You had that much more travel in the gas pedal.
Yep.
And you're not dropping off. And it's like, I saw another kid who pitched for another school. In first inning, he was sitting around 80. And then I went back into the second inning, and he was at 73, 74.
Yep.
So
I think one of the interesting things for me watching a lot of the high school baseball is how rarely the ball does get hit out of the infield.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was relatively surprised based on what I've seen with select ball at these ages.
Yeah.
That there was a lot of struggle to get balls out of the infield.
Yep.
At a lot of these JV games. And I thought that was very interesting. And the back half of a lot of these JV rosters is just filled with these kids that need so much more development.
Yeah.
And never got it. So they're just hanging on the JV team until they get cut playing varsity.
And to me, it's so understandable why there's so much bunting.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
These two things are 100% related.
Yeah.
You have defenses that are decent about turning balls that are hit at them into outs. Let's just say decent, right? You have hitters who struggle to hit the ball into the green and hit into the outfield with power, but you need to move runners around and you need to score. So of course you're going to bunt a lot.
Yeah.
Of course. And look, I've said it before, I'm not going to demonize that at the high school level. I understand it.
Yeah.
But the point of bunting not being a skills scale and hitting is because that period of time from 8 to 14, that's the path so that you don't get stigmatized that way and they don't have to ask you to bunt because you can't find a barrel.
I was gonna say, that's the thing is, who's being asked to bunt?
Right.
I've watched, over the last 2 weeks, I've tracked I've either done like watched live or game streamed every single one of my kids' games. I've seen a lot of bunting.
Yep.
How many times have kids on my team bunted?
I'm going to bingo. I'm going 0. Yep.
It's like relatively clear that like you're not going to be asked to bunt if you can hit the ball out of the infield. If you can hit the ball hard, they're not going to ask you to bunt.
Yeah.
They're confident you can do the job without doing that.
Yeah.
And then you get to like 6, 7 in the batting order, and it's just like bunt, bunt, bunt. And it's, again, I can't begrudge these high school coaches. Like, if I had a roster where the back half of it could not hit water jumping off a Navy pier,
right.
That's the one we used to use when I was growing up. Grew up in Chicago, people. I understand why I would have this kid bunt because, like, I got a runner on first, and I really would like that guy to score. And if the next 3 guys are just going to K,
yeah, you got it. You got to make something happen. Like it's so confounding that people can't see like the long tail effect of this stuff. You know. So, anyways, I wanted to move on from high school baseball.
One more thing.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I'm getting it a little bit from the parent perspective. And we're partnered with Positive Coaching Alliance.
Yes.
They're wonderful. Cletus Coffee, the absolute legend, who comes in and does our PCA stuff, always talks about, like, one of the things that resonates the most with me is he talks to the parents about if you couldn't go to your kid's game, somebody else carpools them, they take them home after the end of the game, they walk in the door, what's the first thing you ask them?
Right.
I have found myself really struggling with that with these kids because I'm kind of in that situation.
Yeah.
Where, I will type out a message like, hey, watch you pitch today or whatever. And it's really hard for me to be like, how did it go? To not say, how did it go?
Yeah.
Or they will message me with a bunch of negativity. These are the things that I did wrong.
Didn't go well. Yeah.
That didn't go well. And I'm like, do you not realize that I watched the game and actually here's my take on what you did? But it's given me like an interesting perspective of how difficult that is to like frame the right questions so that they're not immediately just like talking about the score or whether or not they won or these are how many walks I had. Like, I don't care. Like one of the kids was like, I walked like 5 guys and I was like, what percentage of strikes did you throw? I don't know. Well, it was 55% strikes. So like,
we're good.
Maybe timing wise, you weren't great. You threw too many balls in a row to a couple guys, but like overall, we're 55% strikes. We're cooking. Like I'm very pleased with that outing. It was your first outing of the year. Let's build on it, as opposed to a string of like negative things that you thought you did. And it has been like a little eye opening for me to really realize how difficult that conversation is when you're not there.
Yeah.
To get them to talk about it in a way that's not overwhelmingly negative. Or overwhelmingly like directed at results and scoreboard and not about the process of the game. When I'm there, we can have those conversations. We can have them in the dugout in between at bats, whatever it is. When I'm not there to be able to ask the right questions or try to reframe it, it's so difficult.
It's a challenge, and I mean, I think that might be, I don't want to say a downside, but it just might be the thing that kind of comes with the school. You want to put wins up for the school, right? So and they're now, I think it's a different type of pride. Like I certainly want kids to have a ton of pride about wearing a jersey that says Drive on it.
Yeah.
But I think it's different when you're wearing a jersey that is the name of the school that you're going to all year long and all your friends are at.
You might get, maybe don't do this anymore. I don't know. At our school, they used to announce scores on the morning announcements, talk about the kids that did well, and like everyone's like, "Oh, look at you! Well, like, you're sitting next to me.
You're in the lunchroom, right? And some of those, or you're in the gym, and some of those banners are up there. Like there's a signal that's being sent at the high school level that winning is important, and they should because it is. Yeah. But it's understandable then that like some of the kids' perspective on that might also be informed by that, right? And it's like I've dealt with that conversation with D, where it's just like. He came off the field one day. He's like, I'm just a PO now. It's like, brother.
I can almost guess which game that was after, too.
Yeah. You played 3 games. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
And in the first 2 games, he wasn't hitting. And in the third game, before we went into it, I said, look, I'm pretty confident you're going to probably bat 500 today. And you're going to do some stuff. And it's going to be one small step towards this iterative process of reestablishing how you perform as a hitter in this new environment.
Narrator.
And it's new and it's different.
Narrator. He did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So comes off the field. I'm going to be a PO. It's like, all right, well, hey man, you knocked in a couple runs, made progress. It's not exactly what you want, and I understand that. But it's just accumulating more reps in this different environment that are going to lead you back to the point of doing the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, and a little bit, which I think we've maybe undersold a little bit on the pod, and I think in our programming and kind of environments as well, is especially at like 14U and leading into 15U is the dependence of playing time on results.
Yes.
Because like you can go 0 for 4 with 4Ks and you're still going to get playing time. That might not be the case in high school.
Right.
Right. Like one of the guys on my team who qualified for our high school showcase as a pitcher gave up a Jimmy in his first outing of the year and hasn't pitched since.
Right.
And they've played I think they played more than most teams. I think they got like 5 or 6 games.
Yeah.
So he pitched in the first one and hasn't pitched since. He was the second pitcher they used.
Yeah.
On varsity. Second pitcher. Yeah. And he hasn't pitched since. And it's like, yeah, your playing time is relatively tied to the results that you get, which you can't control because he walked 0 through mostly strikes and found too much of the play with a hanging slider and got. Yeah. Right? And like now he hasn't pitched in a week and a half and is starting to lose confidence.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, maybe we don't do enough at 14U of putting pressure on the playing time. But then again, like I don't want to put that pressure on results and playing time.
Yeah, that balance is so tough.
It's a really difficult balance where like you have to know that it's coming for you at some point. And like it's a difficult thing to deal with as a freshman if you've never had truly your playing time tied to the results you get. Yeah. And then you have one bad game and all of a sudden you're benched for the next 3 games. You're going to start to feel some kind of way.
Yeah.
And really start to press and then play with the fear of making mistakes, which is exactly a thing you can't do. Yeah. So it's been an interesting learning experience for me as well, watching them go through the first couple weeks of high school.
Yeah. It's interesting for sure. It's interesting for sure. I think it's going to be really fun to watch the rest of the season unfold, and see which of our kids, get slid up. One of the kids. I mean, there's just so much positivity that you could find either staying on varsity or getting looks at JV. Like it's all good because it's part of 4 years of experience.
Correct.
And the only thing that I think that we're trying to win is getting in the door at first. Because most kids, if they get cut as freshmen, they're just not coming back.
Yes.
They're just not.
Yeah.
And all we're trying to do is just like, okay, from the time that 9 to 14, focus on the stuff that's going to get you in the door.
Yeah. If you get cut as a high school freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, maybe not, no, not so much, but like freshman, sophomore, junior, and you don't want to quit playing, come to us.
Yes.
Come to us. We have a product for you that we'll talk about in next week's pod don't give up on playing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
missing out on a season of high school baseball and using it to develop is actually a lot of times a net positive.
Yes. Yes. If you are in that box
Correct.
where you need to make that choice,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be the end of your story unless you decide it is going to be. And we have a system and structure and some stuff that we'll talk about next week. You'll be able to do that.
Yeah. I was watching that Patriots show on Apple TV.
Yeah.
And this is the one time I guess I'll swear on the pod, but Tom Brady has he calls it FEA.
Yeah.
It's fuck them all.
Yeah.
And it's if something goes against you, if you have that mindset, so if you get cut from your team as a freshman and your mindset is FEA, we want you. Come here, we will make you better.
Yeah.
Like bar none.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes a podcast guest, spray tan enthusiast, had a great video that he posted the other day that I thought we would end with. Like you're back on the pod. We get to do this again. Yeah. I'm not going to miss an opportunity to talk crap about Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one.
So,
although I did see the person that commented about Smoltz saying that.
Yeah, that was pretty
great.
funny.
It was great.
Yeah, like Smoltz had a great quote.
We agree.
Like weirdly, I agree. I just need you to bring that energy to the way that you engage with the actual professional game.
Yeah.
And whatever. So A-Rod's in a gym and he's wearing like a tracksuit. And like, look, I've already publicly stated that I'm like 3 years away from turning 50. And when I turn 50, I'm tracksuits 5 days out of 7. Straight up. I'm getting Sergio Tacchini up and down. I'm going to get like, if I could find the old Sean John, like the velour sweatsuits, I would do those for sure. Like act like I'm in Sopranos. I would just tracksuited up. I got a couple years, but I'm going to get there. A-Rod, he's younger than me, isn't he? Yeah, I think he's younger than me. Yeah.
He's got to be.
But so he's in a gym, tracksuited up, very uneven spray tan application. So like tighten that up, please. So he gives us 3 keys of hitting moving into spring training for kids.
God,
I'm just going to run these by you.
I can't wait.
First one I don't even actually have a problem with. Balanced stance.
Okay.
Look, I've done videos on Driveline Plus. I think it's in our cert. I think it's actually in the book. I'm a huge proponent of just like you get a kid to address the plate, jump up in the air, and how you land, that should be your balance stand. And we can make these modifications to move a little bit more open, a little bit more closed if you really want to get that technical. But like largely, sure. Like that's a principle I think we can agree on.
Yes.
Good job, A-Rod.
Well done. 1 for 1.
We're 1 for 1.
Yeah. I have a feeling we're going to be hitting 333.
Level shoulders.
Okay.
So then he goes on this whole thing about like if you just, I sit here and I take a swing in the mirror, then I want my shoulders to stay level and I shouldn't dip.
Okay.
And he goes, well, that's a very modern swing move to dip the back shoulder. Mm-hmm. And it is so preposterously idiotic to me that a person of that stature who's played this game long enough and has had this kind of like book of business of experience would sit there and suggest that there is never a situation where you need to dip that shoulder in order to cover a pitch that's down and away.
Right.
Or whether to cover a pitch is coming at you with an extreme descent angle, meaning the descent angle of the pitch as it comes closer to the plate.
AKA the descent angle of youth baseball players.
AKA youth baseball players, right? They don't throw hard enough.
Yeah.
So this is once again someone who's played this game at a higher level than 99.9% of the entire population. But you're giving advice out to parents that's relative to like the last level that you played, not the playing level that you started at. And I understand that because you're 40 whatever years old or 50, 60 whatever, and you're mad online and you're telling people that they should keep their shoulders level with the best of intentions. Because you're going, if I dip that back shoulder and I'm seeing 92, I don't have a shot. Right. Well, guess what? That's not Little League Baseball. It's not the environment.
Right.
Like there was a clip floating around last week on socials. It's like 45 seconds of someone shooting video from like it's like the left center gap looking out to the field.
Okay.
And it's first year kid pitch. And there is a child on the mound who is doing like every fiber of his being is devoted to simply getting the ball to go far enough that it reaches a plate,
Correct.
much less gets there accurately. Right. It's a 45-second video. I would challenge, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I couldn't get through a first like 20, 25 seconds of it before I turned it off because it's just like, this is agonizing to watch. Because there's one kid on the bump who can't hit the broadside of a barn.
And it's the camera's, you said left center facing out.
Yeah,
so you can see all the outfielders.
Yes, you can see most of the
you
infield.
can see him like picking grass.
You couldn't see the outfielders.
Okay. You could see the infielders kicking dirt, drawing things.
It's the worst. We are presenting our game in the worst manner possible.
It's like if youth basketball was a free throw competition.
Oh my!
Where everybody else just stood and waited to get a rebound.
That's it.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
So I understand when you, as a parent, are like scrolling your Instagram feed the same way that I do, and you see a guy like A-Rod who, were his not for his despicable cheating, should be in the hall.
Yeah.
And he says, don't tell your kid to dip their shoulders, and you parrot that on a field. I understand, but like it's so subtracted from competition reality. It's like when I did the clinic for the league yesterday, I talked about exactly that because I happened to see that A-Rod clip that morning. And it's like, it's the same thing as the level swing, right? Level relative to the path of the incoming pitch. Yeah, I agree.
Correct.
Level relative to the ground. Please, for the love of God, no.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Correct.
It's no better than like it's no better than the thing that they literally demonize, right? They demonize the quote unquote launch angle swing where we're going to dip that back shoulder and have excessive attack angle into the pitch. And that's not going to play because unless you time it perfectly, you're cutting through the hitting zone.
Correct.
This thing where you are basically, and what he's basically saying by leveling out the shoulders, he's calling for a level swing plane.
Right.
And it's level relative to the flipping ground, not the pitch.
Right.
So you, ex-major leaguer, are literally giving terrible advice to parents who are going to parent that to their children because you don't remember what it's like to play Little League Baseball. You remember seeing John Rocker throw 92. David Wells, 89, whatever. Like, fine, I understand it. Tomato, potato, man, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's so just agonizingly terrible. And he says it with such confidence.
And that was number 2?
That was number 2.
Oh, let's go.
Number 3 isn't any better.
Yeah.
Focus on the hands. Like
what do I do with my hands?
It's the old Ricky Bobby,
Yeah, the
right?
Ricky Bobby. I was at a wedding last weekend, and I made that joke, and the photographer was like, first time I heard that one, and I was like, yeah, you're right. My bad.
So A-Rod says, when I'm going to focus on my hands is I don't want the path to be this. I want it to be that. So he's literally going, well, don't do that. Like, don't work the barrel behind the path of the incoming pitch of the ball. Or, I'm sorry, don't work the barrel behind the path of the incoming pitch.
Okay.
It's like this wrist shit. Excuse me. It's so bad.
When was the last time he watched a video of himself swinging?
Never.
Well, that makes 2 of us.
And let me just put some context to like the oil spill nature of how terrible this advice is.
How many I know I'm going to hate asking this question. How many views did that one get?
Well, I've heard people say that like the difference between likes and views on Instagram, it's like a 10-to-1 multiplier. At least.
So how many likes did it get?
13,584. So, and let's see. That's one of the more highly liked pages that he's posted recently, other than his weirdo-looking girlfriend. I shouldn't attack him personally. There's enough to attack just based on his terrible advice. It's 130 some odd thousand people, and that's just on one platform.
Yeah.
Who are going to go out onto a field and tell a kid who, when little Timmy, Katie, whatever is on the bump and they're throwing this huge gravity ball that they just like sky cannon shot to them, and that child is going to make a swing move that's literally relevant to that pitch.
Yeah.
And they are going to dip that shoulder, and they're going to try to get that bat on plane of the pitch, and some dad's going to be like, dip the shoulders.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Swing level.
A kid that probably signed up or was willing to sign up and willing to play because he enjoys watching major league players hit tanks.
Yeah, because that's cool. And like, it's so bad. It's so agonizingly bad. And like, I draw a really direct line between that type of bad advice and this presentation of our game. It's just like, you want to think about the fact that we lost 20% of participants last year? It's stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
We are presenting our game in the worst possible way to the lowest levels of kids who have the least amount of attention or affection for the game. And then with those same children, we give them this like just regressively terrible advice that's completely divorced from output. And it's not like you can't simply tell kids like, hit a line drive.
Right.
Because you can do that.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you give them the permission to move in a way that is relevant to producing that outcome for the given pitch. It's not that hard. Like, it really isn't. You know, like I was thinking about, you know, the clinic that I ran yesterday, and there were a couple T-ball coaches that are there.
Okay.
And we spent a decent amount of time talking about like practice planning and these fundamental kind of concepts about how to build a skill and what's good and the value of giving kids external cues, ball flight targets, constant intention of pairing velocity with command, etc. And one of the parents had a very valid question of like, well, can you just tell me how to do it? Like, yeah, I understand, but I want you to think about it differently.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really do. I want you to think about it differently because if you understand that kids are kids and they're not small adults, you understand the benefits of external cueing and ball flight targets and intention in the way that, like, you are a little bit... You want the movements and the mechanics to be representative of the task that they're trying to accomplish, not the other way around.
Right.
And I don't know. I guess I need to keep thinking about a more perfect mousetrap to help people understand like why the benefit of thinking about it that way.
Yeah, if you find it, let me know.
Because like we're in the war for like the thoughts and minds of people, and it's Alex Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to say?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say A-Rod is wrong, and then some people are going to laugh, and some people will be like, oh, well, you think you know more than you are. You're unqualified to be able to give that information because you weren't that good of a baseball player. Yeah, I know. I agree. But look at how that guy moved and swung.
Correct.
Does it sound in any way, shape, or form related to the advice he's giving you? If the answer is no, then you should probably like ask some more questions.
Yep.
And again, Ted Williams, possibly one of the best hitters that ever lived, actually talked about the stuff that he did.
In the Science of Hitting came out in the early 70s.
Yeah, it was like 1967 or something.
Yeah.
Like it's been out for like 60 years almost.
Right. These are not new concepts in any way. But if it makes you feel better, it just is becoming more and more clear that it's all youth sports in America that are really headed in the wrong direction. And not just baseball.
Yeah.
Although I think, like, you posted for our internal families, and I
was literally just going to pull that up
on Instagram and Twitter about the USA Hockey stuff.
Yep.
And they're doing a really good job with it. And that is one of the few sports where we are actually like increasing the amount of American talent that is in the National Hockey League. Whereas if you look at most of the other sports, football aside, so really baseball and basketball,
yeah,
the percentage of like American all-stars is just continuously decreasing.
Yep.
Because they focus on massively different things in these other countries that aren't gameplay over and over and over again.
So I posted this thing on our internal Slack channel for our Academy families. I posted about it online, so you should be able to find it on my socials. But USA Hockey, there's a great study where they talked about the entire process of how they changed their development model. The things that they decided they wanted to value, the inspiration that they went and looked at, communities that were running like successful hockey development programs relative to their player population size, and like, I mean, they went to really great lengths to kind of understand what they were trying to do. And I'll give the one quote that I posted to our families. We can probably end here. But it's everything that I think we advocate for. Mm-hmm. Like it's literally, it's the same. Mm-hmm. So the major differences between this club and other less productive clubs can be pared down to two things: patience and club culture. The club understands that at the younger ages, it is impossible to predict who will be a great professional player in the future. To your point about like, hey, if you got cut from your high school team, it's not definitive unless you let it be.
Right.
It is impossible to predict who would be a great professional player in the future, so they are patient with their young players and focus on development over results. Does that sound like club and select baseball to you in 2024 at large? The other major difference is they have created an inspired culture within the club. Young kids have role models and successful players that they look up to and want to emulate. And look, all I'm saying is that if you're going to listen to a pro player, watch what they do and pay more attention to that than how they talk about what they did. Because some of them, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but some of them are just not very good about meshing those two things.
Yeah.
They're actually really bad at it.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say, like, maybe don't listen to retired players.
Yeah.
Because most of the current players don't have a choice.
Right.
They have figured out how to live in this environment, and we have it's like 8-10% of big leaguers train with us at Driveline, and there's a much larger percentage that train at other private facilities around the country. They are taking that into their own hands, and most of these players know that they need to do this and that there's a different way now, and they have to adapt. A guy who's retired never had to go through that process.
Nope. No, they did not.
And
different era.
Different era. Didn't come up training with that process, didn't develop with that process. Probably the last time they took BP, it was an 8-year-old guy hucking 40-mile-an-hour gravity balls at him.
Yeah, 40 might be generous.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've seen people demonize when Josh Donaldson was on MLB Network, and the clip where he goes.
I'm not a Josh Donaldson fan, but it is one of my favorite clips of all time.
Yeah, where he's like, if your coach tells you to hit like it's like a 4-hole grounder.
Yeah, just swing down on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, tell him no. He's like, you're going to get paid by hitting balls hard in the air. Yeah. And the issue that people seem to take with that is like, well, it's not like anybody's getting paid. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is that like one of these things scales and one of them doesn't.
Success leaves clues. Go hit the ball hard in the air.
Yeah, like it's so, I don't know. I guess it's a good thing that like that idea is so pervasive in different parts of our community, because then we get a chance to talk
Job
about
security.
it. Yeah. Well, yeah. Job security. Yes, absolutely. Okay, you feel complete?
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna do another podcast very soon, talking about a pretty cool new thing that we've got that anybody is going to be able to interface with, be able to train and get some information. It's going to be really cool. Power Bat's out right now. Youth Underload Smash Bat is out right now. Skills Skill Book is out right now. Free programs, drivelinebaseball.com, all that stuff all in one place. That's all I got. Catch you guys next time.